Talk radio, music, and podcasts from the Korean Peninsula. KoreaFM.net. I'm Chance Dorland, and welcome to the Marmot's Hole podcast, brought to you by KoreaFM.net, an online radio station featuring independent musicians and original podcast content from the Korean Peninsula. I'm joined each week, of course, by Robert Kohler, a magazine editor here in Seoul, who for years operated the Marmot's Hole blog on rjkohler.com. Today, we're back to discussing a North Korea-related topic, the guilty verdict and sentencing of American Otto Warmbier. And also, on a lighter note, we'll be talking about Korea's not new interest, but I guess maybe renewed interest in artificial intelligence after the Go match between Google and South Korean Lee Se-dol. So, Robert, not a lot of time on this recording. Let's just jump right into the topic. Two topics today. The first one, as I mentioned, we're talking about Otto Warmbier, the Cavalier Daily at the University of Virginia, which is the 21-year-old's school. He's a commerce major there. Reports that after originally being detained by the North Korean government back on January 2nd for stealing a banner featuring propaganda promoting former leader Kim Jong-il at the Yeonggakdo International Hotel, he's now been sentenced to 15 years of, quote, hard labor, though the Cavalier does note that this type of situation has also played out with many other American detainees in the North who were all subsequently released. We've talked about this before. My position is that we really need to reassess the fact that Americans are allowed to travel there. And this is something that this story kind of focused on and discussed the fact that travel to North Korea is actually increasing at this time. Warmbier traveled to North Korea with Young Pioneer Tours, which is a group that markets itself as providing, quote, budget tours to destinations your mother would rather you stayed away from. And that slogan is, of course, fitting, as the U.S. State Department currently advises against traveling to North Korea, but it is not illegal. It doesn't ban it. Perhaps if a couple more of these things happened, that might change. So, Rob, what are your thoughts on this? Did you see this coming down the pipeline? Was this a little bit of a surprise for you?
A surprise? No. I mean, there's a reason why your mother doesn't want you traveling to places like this. I think we've mentioned before on this podcast that you really need to think twice before you go to North Korea. I mean, the danger aside, and to be honest, as long as you keep on your best behavior, the chances of something untoward happening to you in North Korea is relatively low. I know quite a few people that have been to North Korea, and they've generally had good experiences there.
I know people that have been there multiple times, yeah.
Right. There's also, there's moral issues. I mean, to be honest, look, I don't have a problem with people traveling to dictatorships per se, even though I think North Korea is pretty much in a league all its own. The thing that I find somewhat creepy about the idea of going to North Korea is a lot of people seem to be going because, it's so different from the rest of the world. Well, it's so different from the rest of the world, really. People want to see it, and, people want to, experience what it's like in this, this country that's, for lack of a better word, is this weird society that's, been, cut off from the rest of the world. Comes pretty close to, I guess, what you would call poverty porn. People who go to different countries to see, experience the hardships of people, or, take in the poverty or whatnot. It's like, why, North Korea is the way it is for a reason. It's not something that I think, somebody should get off, people should get off experiencing, right?
But that being the case, people do, though.
I understand that. I just don't think it's a good idea. I mean, okay, a lot of the people that I know that have been to North Korea go because they have an interest in Korean affairs. That I understand, right? And yeah, there's a lot of dictatorships in the world. I know a lot of people have been to Burma, for example, but the people that I know who have been to Burma, they don't go there to check out, oh, let's take a look at the society that's, ruled by, a military junta. They go there because there are wonderful sights to see in Burma. Now, there are wonderful sights to see in North Korea, too, that I hope one day to be able to see. But generally speaking, the kind of tourism that I see going up there doesn't seem to be, oh, let's go and check out Pektusan, or go check out the highlands up there. It's more of, oh, let's go check out, this weird society that we've heard about. And like I said, it's just getting your rocks off, checking out the suffering of the North Korean people. It just doesn't seem like it's not my sort of thing. But like I said, there's people who go to all sorts of weird places, right? So I wouldn't advise going to North Korea. But yeah, I guess people do. Now, as I was saying before, with the danger thing, most people who go to North Korea, everybody I know came back safe. Yeah, there are incidents where people do get caught or do get, end up getting detained. For the most part, especially if you're white and American, you'll probably come through okay and see, pretty much nothing other than the inside of your hotel room. If you're Korean American, your chances of doing time or experiencing severe unpleasantness goes up. But as long as you're well behaved, nothing is likely to happen to you. That said, North Korea is a very, 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 very bad place to do the frat boy thing.
Well, so Rob, you're a professional here in Seoul. You've lived here many years.
I'm not sure if professional is how I describe myself.
People would describe you as a professional. Whether or not you would say that while looking in the mirror is another item. But you mentioned, some of these sites you hope to one day see. I don't see you stealing a poster or doing something else that would get you detained. As you mentioned, white American. I mean, so why have you not gone to North Korea yet? You seem like you would have interest, and it would be at least an enlightening trip without anything, happening that would take away from the experience. Why have you not gone?
Yeah, honestly, there are plenty of other dictatorships in the world I'd rather give my money to.
So you don't want your money going to support the regime?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't want to give my money to that regime. I really can't see things freely. I mean, even if I went to, for example, Iran, and I really hoped one day to go to Iran, even under the current regime, I'm probably likely to be able to, wander around gardens and wander around, historical sites without, being chaperoned. It's, one day I'll just take a bus up there and I'll feel a lot better about it. That being said, I have actually been to Pektusan, from the Chinese side, and it is an impressive site.
So one day you hope to go. You've just talked about all the things that you shouldn't be doing there, and how what your background is can define whether or not you might have an issue or not. But anyone, no matter their nationality or their looks, if they had gotten caught in the same situation as this 21-year-old University of Virginia student, may have ended up in the same situation. So I actually went to a recent conference here. I was actually at the National Assembly just this last weekend. I went to an event that had to do with North Korea, did some reporting on that. And one of the things that I ended up talking with someone outside during a break was that it's almost not even a good idea to try to make predictions related to North Korea, because when you look at the experts making predictions, they're almost always wrong. But that being said, there have been quite a few people who have been detained. For the most part, something has happened that led to their release. You can look into some things that have happened multiple times, like a high-profile person coming. But I think we've talked about that before. That doesn't necessarily always have to be the case. What do you see happening to this 21-year-old who's been sent to 15 years of hard labor? Obviously, that can't happen, right?
Yeah, judging from past precedent, I would say, yeah, that's very likely that, somebody high-ranking is going to go to North Korea and, bring them home. Like I said, as you said before, you really can't make predictions with North Korea, but yeah, my guess is he'll be fine.
And so does that not change anything? We're just going to keep, having the U.S. State Department tell people that they don't want them to go there, but it's still going to be allowed. You're still going to have these types of groups like Young Pioneers Tours, just bringing people either because they have an interest in North Korea or because, some sort of danger-seeking or poverty-seeking experience that you've already mentioned. I mean, this was the situation now, but this has happened previously. I mean, this specific instance of someone, trying to steal something and basically getting caught, something they shouldn't have done, really stupid. Maybe he was going to sell it or something, but, dumb things happen and there's a whole show Locked Up Abroad. Do you think this is just a drop in the pond and nothing's going to change? This is nothing?
Well, who knows? I mean, there's very little the United States can do to prevent its nationals from going to places that it doesn't want to go. It doesn't want them to go.
Well, I mean, they could make it so you can't. I mean, they can't stop you, but they could put something behind that. I mean, we weren't supposed to go to Cuba for how long?
Right, but people still went.
Yeah, but it was on paper. You can't stop people from speeding, but you can tell them not to, and you can have consequences for that action.
True, but I mean, ultimately, there's only so much that you can do. You can't once Americans are outside the borders. I mean, you can try to stop them from using their credit card, for example, in particular countries, or make it difficult for them to do, transactions of any sort. But I mean, if you want to go, you're going to go. Like, look, I mean, as you pointed out, we prevented our nationals from going to Cuba. We told them not to go to Cuba for decades, but, people still went through Canada or went through Mexico. With North Korea, I mean, look, once you're in China, as long as the North Koreans are willing to let Americans in, I mean, there's not much you can do. And as far as, whether incidents like this are going to continue, my guess is because most people, Americans or anybody, most people who travel to North Korea are generally well behaved. They know what the deal is, and they know this is not a country you generally want to, fuck around in. But within any given population, especially if you're dealing with young people, there's going to be a handful of people who are going to misbehave. That's just, numbers. And, eventually, for every, 100, people are perfect, 100 Americans who are well behaved when they go to North Korea, you're going to get a guy like this who's going to get drunk and pull the, forget that he's not a UVA. Beautiful campus, by the way. Very beautiful campus.
I've never been there.
I think I'm not sure if I mentioned this. That's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that before when we were talking about this.
That's where you get Architecture Rain Man.
I like that. Architecture Rain Man. Old reference. I'm not sure if people are going to get that here in the future. But I'm sure we'll talk about this later on. We had a nice break where we didn't talk about North Korea for at least one episode, but then it came roaring back. Second topic here, very different. Not North Korea at all. A lot of people reported this, but specifically I'm looking at a report from Nature talking about Google's artificial intelligence program that beat South Korean professional Lee Se-dol in the ancient board game Go. And, of course, this not only shocked the world, but specifically here in South Korea, people were really taken back by, such a resounding loss. He was able
I like that term, by the way, ancient board game of Go. Does anybody ever say the ancient board game of chess? Does anybody ever say that?
Well, I think because this is a Western audience, so I guess the ancient board game.
Yeah, you don't say. Yeah.
Decent point.
A little bit of Orientalism never hurt anybody, I guess.
Good for you to call that out, Rob. That's why we do the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice that Lee was able to get the one victory, but it was quite handily over on the side of Google. But actually, a little history was made even before this. Last year, the program became the first machine to beat a human player, but of course, 33-year-old Lee, one of the world's top players, so was seen as a much more formidable opponent. After that loss took place, the headlines were very quick to come out with the second part of the story, that South Korea is now investing more than before in artificial intelligence technology. Nature reports that back on March 17th, while, quote, scrambling to respond to the success of Google DeepMind's world-beating Go program AlphaGo, South Korea announced it will invest $863 million in AI research over the next 5 years. Nature says the announcement shocked the Korean public, stoking actually widespread concern over the capabilities of artificial intelligence, as well as a spate of newspaper headlines worrying that South Korea was falling behind in such a crucial growth industry, which, of course, Korea is known as a technology hub. So not something they want to fall behind, especially, after getting beat by Google. President Park also had some talking points on this. She announced the formation of a council that will provide recommendations to overhaul the nation's research and development process to enhance productivity, and emphasized that, quote, artificial intelligence can be a blessing for human society, and also called it the fourth industrial revolution, adding that, quote, above all, Korean society is ironically lucky that thanks to the AlphaGo shock, we have learned the importance of AI before it's too late. I believe, as we mentioned on a previous episode, Rob, you kind of went a little ape shit over some virtual reality stuff that was going on with Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. So it seems that you're into at least certain types of technology. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you think Korea is going to make some big advances now? Is this just trying to cover up for the big loss? Where do you think this is going to go?
What kind of impact that has, I don't know. I do know that the Institute for Information and Communications Technologies Promotion, which is one of the major, think tanks here that deal with IT, they recently did a study, and on where Korea is globally in terms of AI technology.
I'm just going to guess from all the reporting that I've done, Korea is a hardware hub, but not a software hub. So I'm guessing they're not as high as they would like to be.
Exactly. If you have the United States at 100 points, Korea is at 75, and they estimate that means they put them about 4 years back. Japan is at 89.3, which is about 1.1 years back. China is a little bit behind Korea in terms of AI technology. Now, as you pointed out, the government's announced going to be sinking a lot of this, a lot of money into developing it. But people at major research centers that deal with AI here think that what's really needed is you need to have sustained investment in the AI sector. The government thinks, they're afraid that the government thinks that if they pour a lot of money into it, they're going to get short-term results. And they're like, AI doesn't work that way. Google, for example, has been, investing in AI for the last decade. All right. So in Korea, if Korea is going to be successful in the AI sector, what they really need is sustained investment in the sector. And as you pointed out, Korea so far has been very, very good in terms of hardware. It's sunk a lot of investment into R&D in the hardware side of things. But on the software side, it's been the results have been less impressive.
Yeah, we talked about this a lot when we discussed the innovative economy during that episode. The idea that if something happens, Korea is going to make it better. That maybe they'll figure out a way to make it cheaper. They'll advance it, but they might not come up with that original idea.
Well, it's not so much that. It's just that, for example, part of it has to do with the structure of the economy. Now, one researcher I was reading recently pointed out that on the software side of things, the Korean software market makes only up of about 1 or 2% of the worldwide software market. And not a single Korean software company, has made it into the global top 100. And a lot of this is due to the fact that Korea has a chaebol-centric economy, which doesn't leave a lot of breathing space for small and medium-sized companies that, in other countries, for example, in the United States, a lot of your software development is done by small and medium-sized companies. In Korea, you don't have the same type of synergy between the large, your large conglomerates and the small and medium-sized companies. So a lot of people talk when people, at least when researchers here, when they're talking about, how do you boost the software side of things, a lot of mention that you need to create more breathing space for venture startups and small and medium-sized companies so that you get more creativity involved. You have more people doing more things, right? That being said, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but um, I generally found that when Korea does decide to make a particular sector a priority, and it starts pouring R&D, it starts pouring funds into R&D in that particular sector, it does tend to get results. So we'll see how this goes. And certainly, the current government anyway has set up, I think we've discussed this on the podcast before, creativity, creative economy centers where they have, major companies, creating, essentially incubators for, startups and small and medium sized companies, so they try to get them to work together. Again, whether that's going to bear fruit in the long term, or whether even those centers will last in the long term, or whether they'll die off when this administration comes to an end, we'll have to see. So yeah, I mean, I certainly, the government, not just government, but also large companies. I know that Samsung, LG, and Hyundai are all now, Naver for that matter, are all pumping money now into um, uh, AI development. I think Samsung and LG have now put together their own teams dedicated to it. But again, one of the things one of the articles I read noted that I think there may be only maybe 50 or so people who specialize in AI in Korea. It's not that lot. It's not that many. And again, one of the heads of one of the software policy research centers here noted that a lot of the guys who specialize in that sort of thing are actually working in sectors that are not AI related, and a lot of them are saying, screw this, we're going to go, work for Google or Amazon, right? So, keeping keeping your AI specialists working in Korea for Korean companies, they might have to work a little bit at that. Again, we'll see. Now, the AI, the AI thing in Korea, it's not just, in terms of the impact that the Iseidol, DeepMind match has had. It's not just been, okay, the government's taking the AI sector seriously now. A lot of the commentary that you've seen on it here has to do with the impact that AI technology is going to have on the society in the future. There's been a lot of concern about that between the robotics and the AI, a lot of people are going to be put out of work, that you're going to start to see a lot of automation in a lot of sectors of the economy. I think one recent poll came back with 2 out of 3, workers here thinking that AI is going to replace a large portion of their work.
What do you think about that, though? I mean, in America, you think of like robotics, like an assembly line or something. Like I think it's from Roger and Me. I'm a Michael Moore fan,
Right?
And I remember there's
You would be.
how dare you?
Yeah, I know.
Not everything Michael Moore has made, has become gold, but he has made some excellent films. And I really want to see his new film, Where Are We Going to Invade Next? I'm sure I'll eventually, see that. It's gotten some good reviews. But be that as it may, the reason I bring this up is because I believe in Roger and Me, there's a scene where it talks about this like sort of like museum or something that opened in Michigan that was trying to like celebrate the auto industry while all the jobs are going away. And they had this like exhibit you could go to where it was a robotic worker, it was kind of like you go to like a Chuck E. Cheese and they have those robots that sing songs. So it was a worker singing a song called Me and My Buddy, and his buddy was the robot that was basically like, replacing jobs to sort of like turn the idea around that these robots are bad and they're taking away workers' jobs. That's a stereotype, and I think that you could find a lot of, facts to back up the idea that jobs have been lost to robotization in the industry. But, that's the way it's going, and it's probably not something that you can easily get around. But I can't think of any instances that I've ever heard of where artificial intelligence has taken someone's job. Is that just a little bit of a stretch? That doesn't seem like something very likely.
Well, I mean, it's still very early in AI development, so we don't know exactly what kind of impact it's going to have on the society. we know from past experience with technology development in general, I mean, if you look back to what people were saying during the Industrial Revolution, for example, or later with development of computer technology, that there was a lot of concern that that eventually mankind would become redundant, that everything would be automated and nobody would have jobs. It didn't work out like that, obviously. I mean, it's technology can certainly kill certain professions. It can kill certain industries. But at the same time, it also creates new ones. It opens up new possibilities in the economy.
I'm just saying that,
Right.
AI sure one day might, take a job or two, or it might take lots of jobs. It just seems that, I don't know, call me someone who's not looking in the future, with a very clear lens, but that seems far off.
Possibly. But again, we don't know, because just because it worked out that way in the past doesn't mean necessarily that it'll work that way in the future. I know one Korean publisher just released a Korean translation of Martin Ford's The Rise of Robots, Technology and the Threat of a Jobless Future. And I think one of the points he makes is, look, in the past, maybe technology has led to, job creation, or, it hasn't had that kind of dramatic impact on the working population. But again, it doesn't necessarily have to work out that way. And I know some of the things he's been talking about is, creating a guaranteed basic income, so that, not just so that people, can survive, but also to keep the economy afloat. Because, if you put a lot of people out of jobs and they're not buying anything, and that eventually kills the economy, right? So, again, everything's it's still too early to tell how this is going to go. But I will say that, already the government's taking a look at, the impact, and not just the Korean government, but governments everywhere are taking a look at the impact these technologies are going to have. And there are certain professions in particular, ones that are, repetitive, ones that are basically just, repetitive manual labor, or, repetitive, not just manual labor, but things like accounting and, tax services. Actually in Korea, the Korea Employment Information Service recently commissioned a study to figure out which professions are likely to be automated in the future. And a lot of it's pretty much what you would expect. People who work with concrete, for example, butchers, and people who work in slaughterhouses, certain repetitive office jobs, garbage people. Jobs like that there's a strong likelihood that they may be automated in the future. Whereas people who work in the cultural professions are likely to keep their jobs. That's very unlike those professions. For example, painters, writers, sculptors, photographers, animators, dancers, singers. Those people it's unlikely that their jobs are going to be automated. That being said, I'm not sure if you saw this news, but over in Japan, a novel that was co-written by an artificial intelligence computer passed the screening for the Hoshi Shinichi Award, which is a Japanese science fiction novel contest.
That seems, I mean, I would have to learn more about that, but that seems advanced. I'll go ahead and say that sounds pretty decent. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, even the people in the cultural professions might, we might have something to worry about. Although, again, in this case, what happened was the stories were created in coordination with humans and computers, humans setting up the plots, characters, sex of the characters, etc., and the AI writing the sentences by choosing appropriate words and paragraphs. That's courtesy to Dong Ilbo, by the way, the English edition. So,
well, that just sounds like, of course, that sounds like, give a pre-programmed set of guidelines to something and they'll do something. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much of this, but I think we're a little ways off.
No, I do too. And also, with photographers, I don't think we're going to be put out, the iPhone will put us out of a job before Skynet, does. So.
Oh, Skynet. That's nice. Ooh, I'm a big fan of, I guess we'll finish with the side note. I was really disappointed that they didn't go forward with another Terminator. I hear that maybe within the last 6 months, I read something about how the next Genesis type film was shot down and no more of that. So probably no more Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator.
Yeah, he's getting old for that anyway, isn't he?
Did you see that last film? I really liked it. I thought it was fine.
Remind me, who was in that?
I'm guessing you did not see that film.
No, I the last one I saw was with Christian Bale.
No. This was so Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't really in that Christian Bale one. There was like this small cameo, but not really. The Terminator Genesis had Khaleesi from Game of Thrones. She played Sarah Connor. It was a whole new timeline that was a little weird, and a lot of people complained that it didn't actually match up with some of the other films. But it's all time travel, so who's to say what actually would happen? if anything like that occurred. I'm nerding out a little bit, but I like Terminator. I thought Terminator Genesis was fine, and I was a little disappointed to see that wasn't going to continue. But as you just mentioned, maybe we could program some sort of AI program to write the next screenplay and see where that goes.
Yeah, there's a possibility, right? Maybe the Japanese are doing it.
Oh yeah, the Japanese version of Terminator.
They would. Yeah.
They would. We'll leave it at that. Always good to talk with you, Rob. As I mentioned, a little shorter than some of our other episodes, so we'll call it quits for this one, and we'll speak again next week.
All right. No, see you next week.